So I'm going to have a bit of a quick chat about group structures. I hope things are going well, by the way, with your work. I've been having an enormous amount of technical difficulties, and even now, once I've recorded this, I will not be able to listen back to the quality of my recording because the audio playback is not working. Anyway, group structures. Quinn identified 3 kinds of behaviours that are expected or performed by individuals. 3 kinds of roles, you could say, within a group setting. There's group task roles, task-orientated. For example, you might be an initiator of projects or ideas, or a contributor, helping to orient the team towards what the group has to do, or a coordinator, or simply an energizer, something that I used to play in family situations. I'd be the one who'd make jokes or fire people up or get people out of bad moods, for example. Then there's group maintenance roles, which include trying to harmonise or gatekeeping. By gatekeeping we mean whether a person's allowed into the group or not. A standard setter, a follower, a group observer, or an encourager. As you can see, there's a little bit of an overlap between, for example, encourager roles and energizer roles, or harmonizer roles and energizer roles. Can have these emotional elements to them, or affective elements to them. And finally, the self-oriented roles, and by that we mean focused on your own performance within the group. As aggressor, blocker, dominator, or recognition seeker. We've all seen that kind of person, I'm sure, in every group that we've been involved with from primary school onwards. The other factor that I wanted to talk about, because it is quite critical, is group size. It does, the size of the group significantly impacts upon its performance, and you'll see this kind of factor coming up again and again, not just in this subject, but in other subjects. Size of organisation, size of companies, size of groups or teams, size of boards come up regularly within settings as a variable, to use the correct term, that determines the behaviour or performance of the group. So smaller groups tend to be quicker at doing tasks that are assigned to them. Their individual members perform better, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Poorer at decision making and problem solving, particularly complex decisions, and they tend to provide less diverse inputs. And by that we mean smaller groups, simply by the nature of the group, tend to be less diverse in their constituents. Now, this leads to a number of factors which, for the moment, I'll use the psychological term, social loafing. The performance of larger groups tends to have a greater degree of social loafing involved. Let me give a great example. I mean, classically, most people think, when we think football, for example, we think the team is greater than the individuals, the collection of individuals. And in fact, a lot of football pundits, commentators, coaches make statements of that sort. We are more as a team than we are as a group of individual men or women. This isn't true, actually. We are less. I know it's a controversial thing to say, but I'll give you an example, tug-of-war. If you measure the individual pulling strength of every individual within a particular team, tug-of-war team, you'll find that when you put 3 or 4 of them together, their group pulling power will be significantly reduced because everybody feels like the other person can take over the greater strain. There's no way around this. This is a very reliable, replicated kind of effect. You can improve group performance, and you can mitigate or reduce social loafing by a number of different techniques. Social loafing is reduced, for example, in diverse groups, and that includes in things like decision making and tasks. If the group is diverse, it will not have some of these shortcomings of a typical larger group. But to increase group cohesiveness can effectively increase performance in certain areas. So, for example, cohesive groups will have lower conflict within them, but they also will tend to produce less well thought out, less well considered decisions. So highly cohesive boards, for example, corporate boards, are less effective than diverse boards. It's one of the reasons why there is a push going on nationally within countries like Australia to increase the representation of women on boards. It's not so much that women bring a unique female mindset to the board, but having women on the board increases board diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we're talking about visible diversity, because board members often come from the upper class, they often come from rich backgrounds, well-educated backgrounds. So in that sense, they're not diverse. But having a woman on the board increases surface diversity and subsequently improves the quality of decision-making made by boards, because people realise by looking around the boardroom table that there is diversity there, and I cannot simply assume that everyone thinks the way I think. It forces people to spell out their thinking more clearly. You can increase cohesiveness in the group by reducing group size, as I sort of hinted just before, encouraging identification of group goals, spending time together, increasing group status and hurdles to entry. And just to clarify this particular point, nurses, for example, wear uniforms. That tends to help them identify more closely, but they also have increasingly high levels of impediments to joining the profession. They have nursing membership, nursing unions, and as these hurdles increase in height, so to speak, the status of the group and the cohesiveness of nursing as a profession, us against them mentality, has increased. The other perfect way to reduce cohesiveness, and I often joke about this one, is to find an enemy, find a common enemy. It will simply galvanise a particular group's sense of group to see an other somewhere outside the group that they can compete with. And also, when you're dealing with rewards within the group, this is a critical component, because if you reward individuals on performance, like a sales team, and you start to individually reward the sales members, sales people, you will find that group cohesiveness deteriorates and competition increases and subsequent conflict increases. Physical isolation of the group helps the group to isolate, to see themselves as a group and see themselves as differentiated from the other once again. Hopefully that will help you get a little bit of a grip of some of the key issues to do with group performance. And let's see how we go with uploading this, because not much is going right on the technical front. See you soon.